So I'm a mindset coach to over 200 entrepreneurs, coaches, consultants, and sales professionals. And there's one question that I get at least a couple of times a week from a couple of different people. And it's really around, how do I maximize my energy? Like, how do I get myself out of a negative frequency, a negative emotional state, and get back into momentum, get back into action, right? So in this video, we're going to break down a couple of those things that you can do, and I'm going to break it into two categories, right? So there's really two different ways to look at how you can maximize your energy, because the areas that I focus on with a lot of these guys is self-mastery, managing their mind, managing their emotions, and overall just going on that journey of mastering the internal state so that you can raise your frequency, raise your levels of consciousness, and align with the reality that you want to create, whether that's an external outcome, a relationship. Usually it's something related to making more money, because you know yourself, you've had times when you've been in a high energetic state, coming from a place of service, love, gratitude. You're feeling different. You show up differently on your sales calls. You show up differently in your content. You show up differently in life in general, compared to times where you feel pulled down, times where you feel like you're in a low state, a low energetic state. And the thing is, we don't make the right decisions that are going to help us progress when we're in that lower state. Therefore, we get stopped, we procrastinate, we doubt ourselves, and all these things that come up that stop us from keeping the flow going. Now, of course, you can absolutely just push through that if you have an incredible amount of willpower. But I know for many of you watching this, that can be a struggle from time to time, because we only have so much willpower and it deteriorates throughout the day. It starts to go down, okay? So in this video, we're gonna break it into energy amplifiers and energy extractors. That's what we're going to call it. Energy extractors. Let's start with these things. Energy extractors are the things that pull your energy away from you. And when energy is being pulled away from you, it means that you have less in your bucket. Very, very simple. It's like having a big bucket of water and it's just constantly tipping all the time. And then there's a hole at the side, and then there's a hole at the bottom eventually. And eventually the bucket will get drained. When your energy is like this, and it's being poured into all of these different things that are pulling it away from you and giving you absolutely nothing back, then you are going to have less energy. You're going to have a baseline standard and a baseline frequency that you're at throughout on a day-to-day basis. And when you're coming from that energy state, it's very hard to increase it because you have less to begin with. So we want to make sure that we remove the extractors so that naturally your energy is going to rise. And then when you do the energy amplifiers that we're going to talk about in this video, it's going to help you increase that even more and get the most out of your life. Okay, so let's break it down. So we have written down here energy extractors. So some simple things, you probably know these already, and you probably do some of them like everybody does. I get caught with these things as well. I'm not perfect either. Scrolling on social media. Scrolling on social media is being a consumer, if we put it that way. Now, you can be a consumer or you can be a creator. Very, very simple. You can be the one who produces the content that people consume, or you can be the one who just consumes the content. Now, all of us are a mixture of both, right? But we want to be more on the creator side so that we're at least building leverage for ourselves, we're building an audience for ourselves, we're building some sort of opportunity for ourselves in the future by being a creator, by being a producer, okay? Scrolling on social media, especially when it gets to that point where you're kind of like doom scrolling, right? You're on Reels and you kind of get sucked into that world, whether it's TikTok or Reels or YouTube Shorts or just YouTube in general. It's very easy to get sucked into that, especially when you are, it's kind of like a habit. It's something that happens every so often. So we want to be able to catch ourselves in those moments, okay? And just simply make a new choice. Now, I know it's easier said than done. I know you probably tried this many times, but keep going, keep trying. You will eventually get to a point where you just won't look at your phone that way. You won't look at Reels the same way, because you won't want to, because you'll have cultivated the habitual behavior that is working in the opposite direction, which is going to help you become more of a producer, okay? I say this because I've done this myself as well. Now, there's many things you can do to put things in place to be able to remove that habit from happening throughout the day, which is things like Opal, I think it's Opal, yeah. It's basically an app that blocks Instagram, it blocks TikTok, it blocks whatever you want, and it can only be opened by doing a certain amount of things. I don't use that specifically. I have used in the past something called 1sec. 1sec is where you block a variety of different apps, forces you to take a deep breath, makes you rethink your decision of, do you actually want to open this app right now? What's your intention behind it? If you're there to post something, fair enough. If you're there to consume, that's where you can make a new choice. Just that small interruption is a really, really powerful thing to do. Next thing then, pornography. Pornography, self-explanatory, messes up your mind in more ways than one. It really brings your desires sexually out of control, and it affects your relationships. It affects, how you show up, how you view yourself as well, because there's a lot of guilt and a lot of shame around it. And these are just some things that if we can remove these things from our life, then we're going to amplify our energy, which we're going to talk about. So pornography, if it's something that's in your life, if it's a challenge for you, do your best, take the steps to remove it. It's the best thing that I ever did a number of years ago, was to stop watching pornography. We all get caught. We all get stuck in that road. But we have a choice. We have the choice to be able to remove that from our lives. And when we do that, you'll see a dramatic increase in not only your own sense of self-worth, your own value, but your own overall levels of stamina, your overall levels of confidence, and just how you show up in the world, especially when it comes to relationships and how you view women. We want to be able to view women for the princesses that they are, right? The beautiful creatures that they are. Pornography ruins that. It puts them in this light that's very dark, and it can be a very dangerous place when it comes to your own level of, like we said, self-worth, but also just your own level of respect that you have for women. So it's a very, very, very important thing that needs to be really eradicated and removed from our lives as soon as possible. You can make all the excuses that you want. It's not going to amplify your energy. So that's another thing. Junk food. Junk food is something that it's going to naturally bring down your energy levels, because what you put into your body is how you show up. It's like what you get out of your body, what you get out of like how you feel is going to come from what you put into it. So again, it's just something we want to be mindful of. We want to keep our meals simple, keep our meals light. We want to learn as much about the body as we can and understand that the food we put in is something that's going to help fuel us. It's going to help really maximize our energy. So eating clean foods like fruits and honeys and organic food, and anything that we can do to be able to increase our levels of clean energy that we put into our body. So junk food would be considered almost like dirty energy. It's probably the better way to put it. Like energy that can, come from food, and you can feel energized to a degree. But if you sit down after you eat a big McDonald's, do you feel energized? Likely not. Likely you want to sit down. Likely you want to kind of just relax or go on your phone and start scrolling. Maybe even watch porn. You see how they all interconnect with each other, because they're all operating from a certain level of frequency. And when they're all operating from the same frequency, naturally, you're going to consume those things and you're going to slip into that same frequency, which is usually at a lower state. Okay, so again, it's just being mindful. I'm not here to call you out on all these different things and to tell you to stop living your life. I'm just saying that if you do want to maximize your potential, live your purpose, live your truth, become a modern master, which is what we talk about on this channel, eradicating these things are the things that are going to help you amplify your energy, which we're going to talk about a little bit later. Things like Netflix. So it's not that Netflix is bad. It's not that watching movies is bad. I think watching movies is very productive if it's the right movies and it's something that inspires you and brings a creative edge to your life. I think movies are absolutely amazing. But when you're continuously watching it and it's something that you kind of default to, you have to understand that a lot of the production behind a lot of movies, especially this day and age, unfortunately, are created by the same number of companies, which means that there's a lot of hidden narratives, there's a lot of agendas, there's a lot of things that are put out there into these movies that are there to help you think a certain way about something. So we just got to be mindful of what we consume, how much we consume it. I'm not saying to sit down and watch a good movie is a bad thing. That's not what I'm saying. Continuous consumption of anything is a negative thing. Use sparingly, be intentional about what you watch, and have a reason behind it. Movies I like to watch are things like Gladiator, things like Troy, things like Interstellar, things like Braveheart, things like Michael Collins about Irish history. Let's go. And those movies are inspiring, as well as great production films I mentioned like Interstellar, the Batman series, Marvel movies I like to watch as well, even though Marvel are going a little bit of an interesting direction. I'm not sure if I'm into it as much as I was before, but all of these movies, they're well produced, they're well created, they're masterpieces, at least in my opinion. So they're the things that get me inspired. They get me thinking about things differently. That's where I see the value in movies. But when you're over consuming and you're just watching every single show on Netflix just for the sake of doing it, it's not something that's really going to benefit you, in my opinion, personally. Okay. Next thing then is toxic relationships. So being around people who naturally just are bringing you down. Now, I know this is a given. I know sometimes it can be very difficult to, distance yourself from these people. But if there's something that you're aware of when it comes to the people in your life and how they're making you feel and how they're speaking about life or how they're speaking about you, your goals and the things that you tell them and how they react and respond to those things, if that is pulling you back in any way, shape or form, and they're not supportive of that, it's going to limit you in some way, shape or form, unfortunately. And we just have to be mindful of these things. So any toxic relationship, whether that's a loving relationship or whether that's a friendship, if you feel like there's something there that is really pulling you back and limiting you, I would distance yourself from that as much as possible. It's something I had to do as well myself. You don't have to just completely cut these people out of your life, but you can create distance and you'll start to notice a noticeable difference in your energy levels simply from this as well, because of things like quantum entanglement. Quantum entanglement is when my energy field, we all have an invisible field around us, that is either amplified or contracted. And when it's amplified, we're at a high state of consciousness. We're a high emotional state. We're loving life. We're out there. We're moving. We're in momentum. When we're contracted, we're usually doing some of these energy extractors that I'm talking about right here. So when we are understanding that the people around us, we are entangling with those people on a day-to-day basis, or whenever it is that you meet them or how often you meet them, your energy fields are entangling. And if you have someone who's at a really, really high state and you have someone who's at a much, much lower state, you will be the average of those two people. So that's why after you hang out with somebody, even though you were in a great mood, you hang out with somebody, you come back afterwards and you feel this sense of like, oh, I feel a little bit like pulled down. I just kind of feel like heavy or something. That's what's happening. That can easily happen because our energy fields around us entangle with other people's energy fields. And it allows us to either become the average of what that looks like. So if you're up here, you interact with someone down here, you'll probably meet somewhere around here. And that's where you can start to feel that kind of being pulled down. So you got to be mindful. Again, this comes back to that famous saying of you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with, not necessarily because any other reason other than the fact that you're entangling with their energy at all times. And when you do that, you start to become more like them. You start to think like them. There's a friend of mine, Dylan, and we've been hanging out a lot recently because we're living together, and our thoughts are starting to become in alignment with each other. We're starting to think the same things at the same time. It's very interesting. Now, we have some great conversations. He's a great friend of mine. We're always supporting each other, and it's really cool to see that, but it's also kind of like, it's validating exactly what I'm saying in a really profound way, which is very fascinating to even see. So this is what happens when you hang around with people. So you just got to be mindful of those friendships, those relationships, especially if it's a loving relationship as well. Next thing is drugs. So self-explanatory. Drugs are going to basically steal serotonin or dopamine from tomorrow, today, and then tomorrow you suffer. That's basically just how drugs work. Now, I'm talking about hard drugs. I'm talking about things like, class A drugs and things like that. Not talking about psychedelics. Not necessarily talking about weed either, but weed is something that can really drain your energy if you do too much of it, right? I don't personally smoke weed anymore, but it's something that I know a lot of people use for creativity. I know it's something that people use for different reasons. So it's really about how are you using it, why are you using it, and what's your intention behind it when it comes to weed specifically. But any other drugs other than that, it's going to be an energy drainer. It's going to pull that from you. So self-explanatory. Next thing then is something that not a lot of people talk about, but talking instead of doing things. So when we talk about things and we talk about doing things, we say, I have all these goals and this is what I'm going to do and this is what I'm going to do after that and this is what I'm going to do then. When you talk about those things, it pulls your energy. Like it pulls out your energy because you're basically giving energy to something that doesn't exist yet. And you're talking about it so much that you almost get the dopamine hit as if you were to actually achieve the thing and to do the thing. Because we get dopamine from doing actions that are going to progress us in momentum. So when we start talking about things too much and not taking enough action towards it, we start to get the dopamine from the words that we say rather than the actions that we take. So this is something that will pull the energy from you because you're getting dopamine from something that is not actually being actualized. So this is an interesting one, and I've noticed this as well. Anytime I've spoken something out and maybe spoke about it a little bit too much, I would notice that I would start to get those dopamine hits. I would start to get excited about what I would be accomplishing if I was to do this thing, but then I would feel less energized to actually do it because I already got that hit, which is a very fascinating thing. So you want to be mindful of, share things with the right people, right? The right people. Share things with the right people about what you're planning to achieve, what you're planning to do, what you're moving. Get feedback from the right people. Get feedback from mentors and coaches. Of course, all of that. But then always bring it back to keeping it simple and executing. And because that's where you're going to get the dopamine hit from, is the actual execution of that. Okay. This is why a lot of people say, don't tell anyone your goals until you've actually gone off and achieved them and you've achieved this thing. So you can look at it that way as well. It's really about finding what works for you. The next thing then is putting things off. Putting things off, procrastinating, any way, shape, or form around that is something that's going to pull energy from you, because it takes up mental energy, it takes up mental capacity. To think about doing something for long periods of time drains your energy, because you know at the top of your mind that you should be doing this thing. This is something that you want to execute on. You want to build momentum. You want to go in that direction. It gets very frustrating when you don't do it and you think about it for too long because of maybe fear or maybe just, self-doubt or anything that comes up around those things. And if any of those things are things that are going through your mind right now, check out some of my other videos where we go deeper on some of these ideas, okay, to be able to dissolve those things. But if that is something that is reoccurring where you start to think about things more than doing them, it's going to pull your energy. It's going to pull your energy right out because you're thinking and contemplating. And yes, to a certain degree, that is helpful. But a lot of the time, we can solve a lot of problems with just action, experimentation, and being a scientist with the ideas that we have, the things we want to execute on, and not overthinking, or at least catching yourself in those moments of overthinking and putting something into action so that you can shift the energy, shift the perspective, and not dwell on it. So it's not taking up mental capacity around, really what you're thinking about doing. Okay, so that's really the energy extractors. When it comes to the energy amplifiers, there's some things that I want to mention here that I've implemented into my own life. There's more of these, thankfully, than there is energy extractors, and we're going to talk about them now, because one of the main ones, which is a very, very simple one that I constantly come back to every single morning, is sunlight. Sunlight is one of the most powerful ways to amplify your energy. The reason for this is because we are light beings. We are made up of light. Everything around us is made up of light. It travels through light. Information travels through light. Everything. So it would make sense to spend a bit of time with the main source of light that we have on this planet. And when we understand that, at least even from a surface level perspective, that we are made up of light, and you can go deeper into these things as well, look up more about that in your own research. I'll be talking about it more on this channel as well. But for now, let's just understand that we are light beings. We are made up of light. Everything travels through light information. We talk about Wi-Fi signals and frequencies on this channel as well. When we understand that, it makes sense to connect with the sun, to look at the sun, to spend time out in the sun. There's a very, very easy way to look at this is when people go to the beach and they go on holidays and they go to Spain, and they've been living in Ireland their whole life, where I grew up, where it's raining and it's dull and it's grey. They go to Spain, they get out into the sun. That's the main reason that they're in a much happier state of being. Now, of course, they're likely off work, or maybe they're taking a break, which is amazing. But it's because of the sun. It's because they're out in nature. They're walking on the beach, which is another one of the things that are going to amplify your energy. Getting out into nature, which is very directly tied to the sunlight. So every morning, I live here in Bali at the moment, the sun shines down. Even in rainy season, which is it's rainy season right now, the sun shines down, thankfully. Very grateful to be able to live here in a place like this. But I would get out into the sun, charging my body, charging my energy, so that I'm set up for the day. I'm getting out, I'm getting in harmony with the nature around me. I'm standing on the grass, or I'm going to the beach. In some way, shape, or form, I'm integrating myself into really where I came from, which is nature. So the more that we work in harmony with nature, not only do we increase things like our sleep quality, but we increase just our overall well-being, our overall level of vibration or frequency, so that we can operate from a higher state of being, right? This is why going out into the sun, going to the beach, spending some time, relaxing, things like that, allows you to recharge and to actually receive energy, so that it amplifies within you rather than it taking away from you, okay? So there are two things I always keep at the back of my mind. How can I get out into nature more? How can I make sure that there's a clear separation between tech and recording and calls and all these things, because we spend a lot of time in front of the computer these days. How can I make sure that there's a clear separation between me doing this, but also being out in nature, being at one with Mother Earth? Like, let's be real. Like, how does this whole planet just fuel itself constantly? Everything that's happening behind the scenes that we don't see, it's all just running in perfect harmony, and we don't even question it. Like, there's a whole system at play. So how can we integrate ourselves into that more so that we can connect deeper with not only our ancestors, but just that natural spiritual essence within ourselves as well, that's always all around us, okay? Because consciousness, I believe, is within everything. And if it's within everything, it's within the sand, the trees, the sun, everything. And the more we integrate ourselves with that, the more we increase our levels of consciousness and our level of vibration. This is one of the most important parts. Now, on top of that, things like movement. So exercise, very simple, but not just any exercise, not just going to the gym, right? I've learned over the last year or so, specifically as I trained in different ways, doing things like calisthenics, doing things like just general movements, or using weights, but using weights in not a traditional way where you're just like doing static movements, or you're just, doing basic things that you'd see in the gym, but getting out and moving your body, like moving your body in a lot of different ways. Because if you think about it, our ancestors, and when men used to go out to war, like, they're agile, they can move, they can jump, they can swing, they can do all of these different things. They're not necessarily just pumping weights, static movements all the time. It's more for bodybuilding, and it's more for like aesthetics, right? Which I get, totally get. I think that's a very, very relevant part to training as well. But what I'm finding more is that the more agile you can be, the more movement that you do, even as well when it comes to just general resistance training. Like, all of these different ways of moving are just as important as static lifting and bodybuilding and weightlifting and things like that. This is why fighting, as well as another one of these things I have down here, which is an energy amplifier. So fighting not only allows you to use your mind, but allows you to step into your warrior and to really unleash that primal aspect of yourself. And this is really great for shadow work, what I found personally, because the shadow is suppressing things that are part of our psyche and part of our personality that were not accepted, for example. And a big part of this, I know for a lot of men out there, is that a lot of the things that were not accepted or not integrated from a young age were things like aggression, or things like, being confrontational. So fighting is a great way to integrate that as part of your being, as part of your way of operating, to release that type of energy, to get strategic about it. And again, just to be able to defend yourself in any situation. So there's so many good things when it comes to that. But when it comes to fighting, the movements around it, they're not static. You're not necessarily going to be, bench pressing so that you can be a better fighter. Like, it doesn't, like, again, it correlates to some degree, but you're going to be working on your movements. You're going to be working on how you stand, how you move, how you duck, how you move your body. It's all movement. So when I say movement, it's not necessarily just going to the gym. There's a variety of different things that you can include there. And I think the more that we do those things, again, the more we tap into our primal instincts and our ability to work in harmony with nature. So that's another one as well. As part of that, big thing I talk about on this channel, and something I've done every single day for the last number of years, is meditation. Meditation is something that's so powerful because it allows you to go from, I mentioned the warrior there when it comes to fighting. The warrior, meditation allows you to go into kind of that yogi phase, where you're more in that state of like, how can I master my mind? How can I master the energy? How can I master that flow and that connection between my mind and my heart, which is just as important as your warrior when you're fighting. So we need to be able to flip in between those two states as men, so that we can amplify our energy depending on what is necessary. So we want to be able to cultivate both, because if we're just in a meditation all day long, then we lose out the energy amplification that's going to come from being a warrior. So we want to be able to balance the two. Maybe not every single day, maybe there's some days for each one, but as much as we possibly can, manage those two things. So meditation is going to allow you to see thoughts as what they are, which is simply just passing clouds. That's the way I see them. I see them as, if I can look up in the sky and I can just see my thoughts passing by, I can see that I can latch onto them if I want to, or I can just see them as passing clouds if it's something that I don't necessarily want to, act on. It's not something I want to be. It's not something I want to integrate into myself. So when we see our thoughts like that, it means that we are raising our levels of awareness because we're zooming out and we're seeing that our thoughts are not controlling us, we are actually in control of them. And then we can start to program, what thoughts do we want to think? How do we want to act? How do we want to show up? And we can start to think those thoughts because we are in control of them. And that's where you start to work on your level of mastery of your mind, because those thoughts will lead to actions, behaviors over time. And you'll be able to, as you do this as well, understand any limiting beliefs, because the limiting beliefs or empowering beliefs that you have, it's either one or the two, they're going to lead to certain thoughts. So if you have a certain thought, you can see, is that tied to a limiting belief? Is that tied to an empowering belief? Which one do I choose? Where did this come from? How can I rip out those weeds from that limiting belief, discard it as if like, this is not me anymore, that's not part of my identity, I don't choose that anymore, and then take action and move with pace with this new empowering belief that you have now replaced it with. That comes with increasing your levels of awareness, to see that your thoughts are just these kind of things passing in the sky. You choose them, and you can program them the way that you want to program them. And the way that we do that, the way we increase our levels of awareness, is through things like meditation. Meditation is such a powerful way to do this. Now, in combination with that, I have written down here as well, something I do daily is breath work. So breath work is just breathing in through your nose, out through your mouth. You can do that slowly, you can do it rapidly. Something I do with clients as well is where we sit down, we do a full session where it's like 30 to 40 minutes or so, with some guided practices, visualizations and things like that, which are extremely, extremely powerful. Really, the breath is what it's doing is it's activating energy within you that's been pulled and been dense, that may need to be released, because throughout our life, whether that's childhood or early teens or late teens or early 20s or even later in our life, as we experience more things like, trauma, or things like, things that we experienced that we didn't agree with, or whatever the case may be, that energy that we feel in those moments, if we don't integrate it, if we don't release it, it gets trapped in the body. When it gets trapped in the body, it will constantly pull you down, and you won't understand why. So one of the first things that we do with clients is to release that energy, and we do it through breath work. Breath work is moving the energy in your body, allowing it to release, and it can get emotional. I'm not going to lie. Some of the clients that we've had have broken into tears because they're finally releasing a lot of dense energy that they may have felt before, and they feel 10 times lighter. And immediately, like the click of a fingers, they now are able to amplify their energy much easier. Their behaviors and actions start to change, and they're all of a sudden just like on this different trajectory. So it sometimes can be that simple. Now, of course, there's other integration work that is necessary as part of that. So I would recommend, if you are going to do it guided. You can try some things by yourself for sure, and just breathing, getting used to that. That's going to help with the process as well. But for something a little bit more serious like this, you want to get some guidance just to make sure that you are in a safe environment. You've somebody there with you to guide you, whether that's in person or virtual as well. So I just wanted to reference that too. But again, the breath is going to be a powerful, powerful thing to move any dense energy, to allow you to really amplify the way you want to amplify. Okay, so next thing is something I've been doing more recently, which is a salt flush. Okay, so this is where you have, let's say, a bottle of water, something like this, a container. So into that water container, I would probably put in a teaspoon of salt, maybe a little bit more. And what the salt flush does is that it goes into your system, and especially when you do it first thing in the morning without eating, before you have any meals or anything like that, it flushes out your system. Now, you may be on the toilet for some time, but this is going to allow you to flush out any toxins, and it's kind of like a mini cleanse that you can do. Now, I would recommend to do it maybe a couple of times a week, maybe not every day, because you don't want to, rinse your system completely. But especially if you've been eating a lot of junk food, especially if you've been eating a lot of different things that may have toxins in them, which unfortunately a lot of the food out there that we eat, especially when we eat out, does have these things. So flushing out your system is going to be really powerful, because again, it's going to help you amplify your energy in a small way. So I would test that out if you want to try that. Definitely look up more about that, ChatGPT it, just find out a little bit more information. Again, use your own discernment when it comes to these things. Okay, so do your own research. The next thing then, as well as that, let's say after you do that, what I've started doing in the morning is having fruit and honey. So things like mango, pineapple, papaya, dragon fruit as another one as well, some blueberries sometimes as well as any watermelon. So I'd have a big plate of fruit, and I would cover it in organic honey. And what this does is it helps your mind get into a state of focus, because your mind, as far as I understand, runs on glucose. And that's where the fruit really plays a key part in this, because it allows your mind to operate smoothly. Again, coming back to clean energy, like we talked about. And that's going to allow you to be able to focus. It's going to allow you to get into a state where your body's going to be digesting the food very, very easily, because fruit's very, very easy to digest. And you're going to have a clean energy source. Now, you mightn't be really full after it, but yeah, you can get pretty full pretty fast off eating a lot of fruit, and that will last for a certain amount of time. Probably not very long, but it will give you that fuel so that later on in the day, after you've done your deep work or whatever the case is, you can go off and eat a bigger meal. So that's something that I've been recommending to a lot of people recently, because I've been doing it a lot myself, and it's proved to have a lot of benefits. Now, of course, this is very tied to where you live as well, because I live in the tropics. So I live in Bali right now, and that's why this is working so well, because a lot of this fruit is growing here already. So it's kind of in alignment with the place I'm living. The fruit's growing fresh and it's in season. So a lot of that has to play a part in it as well. It mightn't be the exact same case if you were to live in a colder country. This is where you would probably look at different fruits or different things that would have a clean energy source. So again, just use your own discernment with this, do your research, and just find out what would be working well for the place where you live and the type of diet that you want to have. Again, whatever you're optimizing for as well. The next one then is something that's been really powerful for me, especially over this last year and a half or so, which is sitting with dense emotions and then turning that intentionally into action. So one thing I like to remember with all of this is that energy is everywhere, and we're made up of energy as human beings. But emotions are just energy that's in motion. And it's a signal for us to act. It's a signal for us to do something with it, because when we feel a sense of fear, we're being challenged. We're being presented with this opportunity to transmute that energy of fear into something more powerful. That's the constant challenge that we're facing. So when we look at emotions and we feel any sort of density, and when I say dense emotion, a dense emotion like fear or guilt or shame or just doubt, anything that's pulling you down, anything that really feels like it's extracting from you. One of the most powerful ways I found to do this is to sit with that emotion and stare it directly in the face. So let's say you're experiencing fear. Let's say you're experiencing doubt and fear about your future or where that's going to go. Really, really feel that. Like sit down, get comfortable, and just feel that fear. Don't push it away. Don't go on your phone. Don't suppress it. Don't try to run away from it or change it or ignore it. Sit with it. And when you sit with it, how can you see it for what it is? Which is simply a challenge to rise, simply a growth opportunity, simply a signal that has been able to be presented to you in such a way where you now have the opportunity to stare it directly in the face and ask yourself, what am I going to do now? How am I going to turn this into a positive outcome? How am I going to turn this into an intentional action that is going to move me forward? Now, obviously there's more to that. There's more guidance around that and something I do with clients specifically, but that's the overarching high level of how I think about it. Because the thing is, like, energy gets trapped in our body. So these dense emotions that we feel, like fear and guilt and shame and all these different things, sometimes are just stuck. And they're stuck because we suppress them, we push them away, we don't want to feel them, we don't want anything to do with them because they're uncomfortable. But they're the parts of us that are giving us the biggest growth opportunity to rise up. So being able to sit with that, stare directly in the face without any distractions and really just being there with it, fully present in it, allows you to feel it, allow that energy to just flow through you, and then intentionally with your mind you just decide that this action that's going to be taken next is going to be charged with this emotion, this energy that you've been able to transmute into something more powerful. So you turn negativity into positivity with your intention in your mind, understanding that you're just simply moving energy. And with that, you choose to take back your power and you choose not to be controlled by this negative emotion that unfortunately we were never really told how to manage when we were kids. So when we don't know how to manage these things, they just control us. So we have to take back our power and take back control and understand that simply any emotion is just energy in motion. That energy can be transmuted into something more positive and more powerful with our intention. So that's a really, really powerful one. That's how we amplify our energy, because likely there's going to be times of doubt, especially when you're on this journey of mastery, you're on this journey of business, sales, increasing your income, becoming a high value person in this world, becoming someone who has resources, becoming somebody who has a bigger and better life and being able to do these things that you really want to do. You're going to face doubt. You're going to face fear. You're going to face things that have happened in the past that you may not even remember. They're going to come up. So you got to be able to manage those things. This is why we go on this journey. This is why we're here. This is why this channel exists, so that we can execute consistently and transmute that energy into something more powerful, right? Next thing, something that's been really powerful for me, especially in those beginning stages, but something I still implement to this day, just more as part of a lifestyle than anything else, which is semen retention. So retaining your seed, not ejaculating. When you do that, you increase your creative ability, you increase your level of vitality, increase your energy levels. There's so many things that go up. And what I found this to be very powerful for is not only your level of confidence, not only your level of certainty, but just your ability to produce. Like, I'm naturally an energetic person. Like, I like to do things. I can spend very, very long hours working if I really want to. But I found that when I do this, it just amplifies that even more. I lift heavier in the gym. I'm more inclined to go out and work out or fight or do any of these different things, as well as work and do calls and all the other stuff that comes with running a business as well. So I found that this is one of the key tools I can always come back to. And I notice a very significant drop if I was to ever release as well. So this is something I use as a tool. It's something I've kind of integrated as part of a lifestyle. It's not something that I really think and count the days of how long I've been retaining. I don't do that anymore. I used to do that in the beginning, but now it's just more part of the lifestyle, and that's something that really, really helps me amplify my energy. And then if you are going to release, you release it with intention, and preferably you release it with a woman. So that's just something to think about as well. It's something that's really, really powerful. Next thing then is socializing. So socializing with the right people. This is something that can really amplify your energy. There's been many times where I've sat down and I've kind of been in my head thinking about different things, and when it comes to business or just whatever the topic is, and I would sit down with a friend of mine or a couple of friends and we'd have a conversation. And after the conversation, not that we were talking about anything specific that I was thinking about, but just in general, it kind of pulls you out of your mind a little bit, because sometimes it's easy to get caught up in that, and you can start to amplify your energy because you feel energized by someone else's purpose, someone else's dream, someone else's thing that they're working on. And that can help amplify your energy as well. So just having conversations with the right people, even if there's something going on in your life, having great people to talk to is a really, really important thing. And I find that a lot of the guys that I work with are simply just looking for somebody to be able to be in their corner when times come up. And that's one of the biggest things in terms of the value propositions that we have as part of our program, which is not something we really promote, but it's one of the biggest things that so many guys get out of our program, simply because they have somebody that cares about them, that they can talk to, that is on a trajectory that they're going on as well, and allows them to open up about things where they feel safe, they feel secure, and they feel more powerful to be able to express those things in a healthy way. So that's just something I want to mention there as well. These conversations that you can have, whether that's with a friend group, a coach, a mentor within a group, extremely powerful for your personal development, allow you to really excel and really accelerate your progress internally, because it can really amplify your energy with the right people, right? So socializing. Another thing then is redefining and just working on my mission, my purpose, and whatever that means in terms of what I'm working on for specific projects or just, things in general. So anytime in my life where I feel a loss of direction or I feel like I've lost touch with why I'm doing things, coming back to my vision, coming back to my purpose, coming back to my identity, the person I'm stepping into, always helps me amplify my energy, refocus and recalibrate my mind to get back on the set point that I'd set for myself, that allows me to be able to move with momentum. It gets me excited, it gets me up and running and pulled towards something. And without that, I really do feel a sense of I don't know what the energy is. I kind of feel like a sense of like I'm not being what I'm meant to be. And if I lose sight of that, I find myself being a little bit idle. I find myself not being able to produce or show up because I feel a lack of direction. And when I feel a lack of direction, it means that I've lost sight of really what I'm working towards and the big thing that's really pulling me. So when I always come back to that, and I do it once a week, when I come back to that, it allows me to get back on track, allows me to remember why I'm doing everything. And that week is usually a week that is filled with momentum because of it. So coming back to that is really, really, really powerful. It helps me amplify my energy. Learning, reading, anything related to that is always something that helps me as well, because again, I feel like I'm increasing my value, I'm increasing my level of knowledge, I'm increasing my depth of mastery when it comes to my craft, when it comes to myself, and that gives me energy because it allows me to have a coaching call or have a conversation with a client or show up with a friend from a higher place of understanding to really help them navigate anything they need to navigate. And that gives me a sense of energy, right? To tie into that and to tie into the vision, the purpose, the mission, coaching calls actually give me energy. Like a lot of the time I thought that, okay, if I have a call that's, or if I have a day that's stacked with calls and they're all coaching calls, I felt like that would be a drain. That would be, I'd be tired after that. But more often than not, the more calls I have on a coaching day, specifically where I'm doing one-to-ones or maybe some group stuff as well, I find that even after the calls, my energy is amplified. And that's how I know I'm in alignment with what I'm meant to be doing, because it allows me to increase my energy by doing and executing on the delivery side of my business and the delivery side of the partnerships that I have with other people as well. So that's something that I know was in alignment for me, because with other things that I had been doing in the past with different offers, I didn't feel as energized. I felt a bit of a drain, and that's how I knew that I was out of alignment with what I was meant to be doing. So another thing that I want to mention, which is really the very last one, which is tied to what we talked about when it comes to sitting with dense emotions, just being in silence. Sometimes you don't really need to process anything, you don't need to do anything, but silence is always a good place to be as a default. Out of distractions, out of, your mind, out of thinking about everything or trying to figure everything out. And as men, we're constantly trying to solve problems, which I think is a great thing. But we can get very easily caught up in trying to do that all the time. Bringing ourselves back to silence, just sitting there out in nature, maybe with a journal if you want to write something down, and just allowing that space to be there, allowing everything to just be, and to just be in the moment, right here, right now. Nothing needs to be done. You don't need to do anything. You don't need to think about anything. You can just be here. It's kind of like a meditation almost, just sitting there. I think that's extremely powerful thing to do. You can do a bit of reflecting as well, or journaling, like we said. Journaling is a big part of this as well. I kind of forgot to mention that, but that's an energy amplifier too. You write down the things that are on your mind. You get it all onto paper, whether that's a mind dump, and you try to find your priorities and what's really going on and what's the best course of action. It's a great thing to do as well. Journaling is a super powerful thing to do. I've kept so many journals over the last number of years that I'm so grateful for, because I can always look back and see what I was thinking 3 years ago in March on the 17th. I can see exactly where my mind was at, and it's always a good reflection tool to see how far you've come as well. So with all this being said, one other thing that came to mind there was listening to music, and listening to music that really helps you connect with just the feminine energy that comes with music, right? Feminine energy and music go hand in hand, and really being able to listen to that, whether that's something that's soulful for you, whether that's, if you're religious, whether that's worship music, or whether that's just simple meditation sounds, or maybe it's a song that you really like, a song that lifts your energy. Maybe it's a song from a movie, maybe it's a soundtrack, maybe it's just an album from an artist that you love. Listen to it and be fully present. Don't be on your phone, just listen to it and be it and feel it and be in it, and allow that to flow through you. It's another thing that really helps me amplify my energy. Music is such a powerful tool when we use it strategically on how to do these things. So with all that being said, these are some things to help you not only remove the energy extractors, but to help amplify your energy as well. So I hope you use this video as a reference point on those days where you feel like you're being pulled down, or you feel like you're in a low state of frequency, you feel like you're not in momentum. Come back to these things. Are there some times where you're doing more of the energy extractors than you are of the energy amplifiers? The first protocol is to remove the energy extractors. The couple of things we mentioned at the beginning of this video, which I'll repeat here just for reference: scrolling, porn, junk food, Netflix, toxic relationships, drugs, talking instead of doing, and putting things off or procrastinating. Those things will help drain your energy. If you just remove those things or stop doing them, your energy will naturally rise. Give yourself some time to recalibrate, and then look at the energy amplifiers to be able to look at how can you really build momentum now that you have more energy. So reference some of these, like sunlight, movement, meditation, salt flush, fruit and honey, breath work, sitting with dense emotions and turning them into action intentionally, semen retention, socializing with the right people, refining and working on your mission, your identity, where you're going, to bring that sense of purpose back into your life. Learning, reading, those things. Fighting, like I mentioned, is part of like movement. Silence and reflection, listening to music, and also whatever your purpose really is, or the thing that gives you energy in terms of service to other people. Last thing on that I actually want to add in here as well is just giving. Something that can really amplify your energy is just giving to more people. Maybe it's a parent, or maybe it's a family member, or a friend, maybe someone who's just in your life. Is there something that you can just give to them? Maybe buy them a present. Buy them something nice that you feel like they would enjoy, they would like, and just give it to them. That's an energy amplifier. So that's something you can do as well to really, really not only amplify your energy, but the person you're giving it to as well. Surprise them, give them something nice. It's always a beautiful thing to do for anybody. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. If you're new to the channel, subscribe. And if there's anything on your mind, I want you to share it in the comments below. I want to see where your mind is at. Is there anything that was unclear? Is there anything you want to go deeper on? Maybe we could even reference that for another video in the future. But I'm sending you so much love. This has been Jordan. We'll chat soon.